Coccyx pain or tailbone pain down in this region when you're sitting is a comment or question that we get on a lot of the videos. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about this and help you understand it once and for all so you can stop making continual mistakes with this issue and start to get some relief. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Michael Fatiga, the osteopath and spine specialist here at Back in Shape. We help people around the UK and all over the world fix their back pain from home and get back in shape for the long term. And today we really need to help you guys better understand what's going on with this coccyx or tailbone pain so you can put it to bed once and for all. The first thing to cover is what's actually happening when you are sitting correctly. And if we look from the back of the spine here, we have the sitting bones, okay? And these sitting bones are right here. Those are where the hamstrings insert into the pelvis, and you'll notice as we're sat down, if I'm sat on a chair, not including the fact that we've probably got a bit of cushioning from our buttocks and then maybe some cushioning of the chair, the coccyx itself is just floating in no man's land. It's not touching the floor or the chair or the seat that we're sitting on, meaning we're not resting on our coccyx and we're certainly not resting on our tailbone. And we could do this experiment by sitting on a stool. And if you sit correctly, you should be sat on the sitting bones. So although we're experiencing pain in that particular area down over here, we need to first understand that we are not putting pressure on the coccyx in this position. Now, the only conceivable way we could actually be sitting on the tailbone or coccyx is going to be if we are sitting so god-awfully that we're actually slouched back in this kind of semi-recumbent position. And you can see now the bottom part of my bottom, so to speak, is actually going to be touching the chair or resting on the tailbone or coccyx. So with this second position, it really is quite terrible for the lower back, and we'll explain a little bit more going forwards. But of these two positions, the first position that we discussed still has more load on the lumbar spine compared to the standing position. But the second position is even worse. So everything that we're talking about from this point on in the video, if you're sitting in the second position, you're just making things even worse, even more exacerbated, even higher forces at stake on that lower back. For the real reason that it actually hurts in that area, we have to understand what's happening when we are sitting, even in the good position, as I mentioned a moment ago. And when we do sit down, we generally, especially by sitting on a normal chair as opposed to a kneeling chair or perching on a stool, we generally eliminate and flatten out the lordosis. Note, we are still sat on the sitting bones in this position. But what this does is it compresses and puts strain on the lower lumbar segments, L4-5 and L5-S1. As a result, if we've got any degradation of health, we've got minor disc bulges, dehydration of the discs, or herniations in that section of the lumbar spine, we are going to aggravate those tissues. And what is extremely common with injuries to the lower lumbar spine is that patients will actually point in clinic to the area of the body that they're feeling the pain, and they're actually feeling the pain over here. There is nothing that can go wrong here, short of falling off a ladder straight onto concrete onto this section of your spine, you fractured the bones. But even so, the fracture will heal relatively quickly. The disc injuries and other ligamentous injuries will be what bothers you in the long term. But you're not actually experiencing pain here. Although you feel pain here, this is very similar to sciatica, whereby we experience the sensation in the leg, but it's because there is an injury at the lower section of the lumbar spine. So what we get in this scenario is not kind of a full, true sciatica, but it's that we're getting this referral pain leaking from the L5 or L4-5 segment, L5-S1 or L4-5 segment of the lumbar spine, leaking down over this area. And it feels like it's kind of going down into the bum area. And that's why we're experiencing this pain in the sacrum and the coccyx. It is a referral of pain from those lower lumbar segments that are injured, that are then exacerbated when we are sitting down, particularly for long periods of time. Using a cushion or something else to sit on does absolutely nothing for the actual impact or load on the disc. It also does absolutely nothing for the coccyx, because the coccyx, if you've got a hole down here that you're sat on because you're sat on a cushion, your coccyx is miles away. It was miles away from the flat seat that we're using anyway. So it's not really going to make any difference. Now, granted, it might be comfortable, but it's not doing anything to take pressure off the coccyx if you understand that sitting position that we discussed at the start of the video. The additional problem with some of those cushions is that they could actually be making you a little bit worse because they're soft and squidgy, you kind of sink and flatten around the lower back even more into that position, thereby aggravating the lower back more, aggravating the pain that you're experiencing more, vis-a-vis making the feelings of soreness in your tailbone and coccyx worse. So that's all well and good, but how are we actually going to relieve the pain now? We understand at the very least that we're not making the coccyx itself, the bone itself, the tailbone worse, but what are we going to do to fix the problem? And that we've got 3 pillars for you guys today that really represent the strategy that needs to be employed to recover from these sorts of back injuries. So before we get into those, for those of you that have to sit, there are a couple of quick tips. Number 1, use a comfortable chair that you can sit in a good position with, and maybe use some lordosis support. Perhaps using a sit stand desk so you can do part of your day standing, part of your day sitting can be a good strategy. Using kneeling or perching chairs can also be a great strategy so you're a bit further forwards. This hag chair is a really good option because I can literally sit in a position where my thighs are going away. I'm much more upright and I don't have any real pressure on this area of the buttocks at all in this position. So onto the pillars. And the first pillar is going to be pillar one, education. Without good education about what it is to have a healthy back and how the back works and how the back fails, then we're not going to make good results in terms of recovering from this kind of tailbone pain or coccyx pain, because we're not actually making the problem better. We're continuing to make the problem worse. So much of the reason that the back pain hasn't got better, the injury hasn't got better, is because we're making it worse every single day. So if we do not apply that element of education to what we're doing. For example, if we're doing really good squatting exercises, learning to control our spine, but then rounding our back all over the place when we're putting our shoes on and doing other bits and pieces, we're constantly going to be tripping ourselves up. And that's why education is so important. Pillar number two is relief-based work. We want to do some things to relieve the stress and strain of daily life on our lower back. And that can be things like the bed decompression, the towel decompression. It can be lower body stretching. It can be some contrast bathing. All of these things to offset some of the strain that's building up in that lumbar spine. And we can do these multiple times a day. And there's a link down in the description to a full routine that you can follow that lays this out for you. You just hit play, you follow along with it, and that is what we would classify as a relief-based work. And that is a alteration or a modification of our phase one routine that all of our members will do long-term for their back health, back hygiene. The third pillar is the pillar that actually transforms your body, and that is the rehabilitation work. Doing exercises like we discussed on the recent Core 5 for spine health that rebuild the ability of you to control your lumbar spine, support it effectively, and then rebuild strength and resilience with real, true to life, everyday movements that everybody can do or learn to do is vital to your long-term success. In the short term, being able to, for example, do a squat without the lower back bending all over the place is a vital skill because it means that it's going to help you make daily life safer. And that's where the education comes in, applying the good squat that you're doing in your workouts or your exercise or your rehab to daily life activities like getting out of a chair. But beyond that, as you progress further through your rehabilitation and healing really takes hold, you're going to find that those same exercises are there with load to rebuild the resilience of your lumbar spine and actually, in some cases, make it stronger than it was before. So the links down in the description to those two videos, as well as others, will be really helpful. You can check those out after this one. And there are also a number of other videos and tutorials that are on the website that can help you navigate through these individual exercises to find the right version for you. Because let's face it, if you could already do those sorts of exercises without any trouble, you wouldn't be here. And so understanding that you might well make some mistakes when you're learning those exercises, like the Core 5, and that maybe easier variations are going to be more appropriate for you for the time being, is something that's important. Make that realization and then start to move from whatever level that you can do from there to progress on. Ultimately, this coccyx or tailbone pain is going to be caused when we're sitting down by the excess load on our lumbar spine. And if we can acknowledge that at least the very start, we can start to take steps to deal with the lumbar spine issue that is there, rehabilitate the lumbar spine, change our practices, and start to move forwards. If we do that effectively, we're going to get rid of that pain that we're experiencing each and every time we're sat down. Hopefully you have found this video enlightening, a little bit helpful, and you've got some resources to get on with now to start to resolve this issue for good. If you did find it helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you know someone else that's struggling, consider sharing this with them. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.